We want what do you call it? Granular selection.
Since the beginning of mankind, humanity has been designing and engineering marvels of creation, from gigantic bridges to waterways to vast city structures to modern-day times of artificial islands in Dubai and terraforming the planet, mass skyscrapers that reach to the clouds, huge stadiums of wrought iron and steel. But one thing many people fail to realize is the vast infrastructure and engineering that has been put into our foundations around America. Beneath our feet, underneath the very buildings that you work inside of, lays a myriad of underground highways, roads, cities, military bases, and communities. In this video, I will show you old YouTube footage of journalists that are far gone that have discovered these areas, these weird coincidences, and followed the paper trail of the trillions of missing dollars that have gone into paying for this.
Pentagon, the day before 9/11, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld declared war, not on foreign terrorists.
The adversary is closer to home. It's the Pentagon bureaucracy.
He said money wasted by the military poses a serious threat.
In fact, it could be said that it's a matter of life and death.
Rumsfeld promised change, but the next day, the world changed. And in the rush to fund the war on terrorism, the war on waste seems to have been forgotten.
My '03 budget calls for more than $48 billion in new defense spending.
More money for the Pentagon when its own auditors admit the military cannot account for 25% of what it already spends.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
$2.3 trillion with a T. That's $8,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. To understand how the Pentagon can lose track of trillions, consider the case of one military accountant who tried to find out what happened to a mere $300 million.
We know it's gone, but we don't know what they spent it on.
Jim Minery, a former Marine turned whistleblower, is risking his job by speaking out for the first time about the millions he noticed were missing from one defense agency's balance sheets. Minery tried to follow the money trail, even crisscrossing the country looking for records.
The director looked at me and he says, "Why do you care about this stuff?" It took me aback, you know. My supervisor asked me why I care about doing a good job. So
he was reassigned and says officials then covered up the problem by just writing it off.
They got to cover it up. That's where the corruption comes in. They've got to cover up.
You see, when the government admits that the plane during 9/11 that hit the Pentagon, hit the exact part of the Pentagon that stored all the records for the missing trillions of dollars, you have to ask yourself, was that planned? And you even have to go further and say, is the 6 trillion missing dollars accurate? Could it be more? Could it be greater than 6 trillion? Remember the 6 trillion as we proceed forward in this documentary. This missing money is not used to fill the pockets of the rich and elite. They already have their old money. This money is used for black projects and, in my opinion, and vast underground infrastructure that is used for the continuity of government and the vile people in an emergency. This is where the elite will go into hiding. Also, many of these reports indicate massive prison-like structures underground, massive caged areas where all the barbed wire points inside. We all know about Gitmo and other black sites that are used for jails, like Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq. But the scariest of these prisons are hidden, far from human eye, and deep underground. And the underground cities is just like the above ground. It is easy to label all underground military bases as that, military bases. But the CIA has their own independent underground facilities, the FBI. Every faction out there is operating underground in their own area. First, I would like to show you what is possible. We are going to look at some underground footage of around the world, various YouTube videos I will put in here. Get comfy and just understand that we have already engineered mass tunnels underground. We have declassified documents of Cheyenne Mountain, of Mount Weather, of all these known underground facilities. And I'd like you to take note of recent projects like subway designs and all the infrastructure we have going on right now. Around the world, there's underground explosions being heard and felt in New York City, Los Angeles. Unexplainable things, but I can explain it. They are expanding their infrastructure with your money.
We're under the streets of Helsinki, the capital of Finland, and I'm going to show you the elaborate tunnels and passageways they have. A lot of it is public space that looks like they're sporting fields. People use this all the time, and yet you can see the granite rock and the fact that this space could be turned into bedding for 1,500 people in 3 days. That's the time limit they give themselves to turn this from a sporting field into a shelter if required. We're going to walk through here. I'm going to show you some of the other tunnels because they go right across underneath the streets of Helsinki. It's all part of their civil defence. They won't say that it's to do with a threat possibly from Russia. It could be a nuclear attack. It could be chemical warfare. It could be anything. But they want to be prepared. So now we're coming into one of the other tunnels. Have a look at this. These are the beds that they have prepared. Bunk beds that people can sleep on. They've got medical equipment ready. And then over here, this is how they would go to the toilet. So the toilets would be here. They've got the ventilation up there. The yellow lines on the floor are where each of the toilets would be put. And have a look at that tunnel there behind me. So you can imagine this runs all the way. If we kept following this, you would keep coming into some of those public areas that could be sporting fields or swimming pools, areas that can be easily turned into some kind of shelter for the people of Helsinki. They could fit 700,000 people in here. That's more than the entire population if they have to. They maintain them very well. They make sure they've got their own air supply in case it is a nuclear accident from Eastern Europe and they have to come down here and protect themselves. They make sure that they've got everything set and ready to go. They are more advanced with this than just about any other city in Europe. And although they share this massive border with Russia, and there is this question about whether Russia is a threat to Finland, they say they're taking into consideration any worst case scenario, they're ready for it.
Driving south to Colorado Springs, it looms in the distance. One of the most famous military bases in the world, Cheyenne Mountain. 1 mile inside the granite, 2,000 feet down from the top, it is a giant command and control center that has kept America safe for 50 years. Inside the mountain are 15 2- and 3-story buildings. They are freestanding but connected by hallways and ramps. There is also a service area to keep the complex running. And even reservoirs, yes, underground lakes. You get inside by driving through a 2-mile tunnel. And when you get to the middle, you see the doors. The 2 famous blast doors that have kept the facility safe when they're closed. The door to this building weighs 25 tons and runs on hydraulics. It's usually open all the time, but if it is closed, oh, then there's a problem.
I mean, obviously Cheyenne Mountain was built to survive and endure through a nuclear event, and all of us hope that never happens.
The buildings behind those doors were built on 1,300 giant springs that can move independently if there's an explosion or earthquake. They would bounce, but they wouldn't break apart. And that's important because of what goes on inside those buildings. In control rooms like this one, which was set up just for us, experts keep an eye on possible threats. Everything from missile launches around the world to 23,000 objects in space. It includes satellites, the International Space Station, and lots of space junk. The original tenant, NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, is now headquartered at nearby Peterson Air Base, but it still has a command center here in case it's needed.
On the day that you hope never happens, the worst day in American history, their plan would be to come up here and operate out of here so that they would have that survivability capability.
As you can imagine, security for the control rooms is pretty tight. Our security escort said he can't even get inside them.
I can only fantasize about what goes on in there. Maybe a lot, maybe little, but whatever it is obviously important. So,
in the buildings underground, there are other facilities for the 300 to 400 workers. There's a cafeteria, appropriately named the Granite Inn. As everybody knows, it's not easy protecting the country when you're hungry.
Thank you.
There's an exercise and weight room because you can't just go work out at the 24-hour fitness during your break.
All right.
And if you want to find a pickup basketball game against a, say, short Jewish basketball legend, well, that happens too deep underground.
that's how we do it up here in the mountain.
And since many people are in the mountain for long hours, a little shopette provides all the needed staples, like potato chips. All the comforts of home, sort of.
Whenever you're walking through the halls, it's not like, you're seeing rocks everywhere. It's normal buildings, and so it's very easy to forget that you're underground. It's also hard to navigate in this building.
You get lost a lot?
Yeah, I get lost a lot, so.
To keep this all going, there are miles of pipes, cables, valves, and thousands of rock bolts to make sure the granite's stable.
As far as I've known, nobody has gotten hurt from loose rocks falling out and hit somebody in the head.
The place runs on Colorado Springs electricity, but there are 6 giant generators to back up power in the case of an emergency. There are 4 reservoirs like this one that can be used for cooling and drinking water.
Well, this reservoir is like 20 feet deep, and it holds about 1,000,005 gallons of water.
And a pet duck lives on this lake, but since it never moves or eats, we're guessing it's a rubber ducky.
I don't know the duck's name. You can give it a name if you want.
Cheyenne Mountain has been called America's fortress. The facility under Colorado is the eyes and ears of the U.S. defense system, watching and listening to what's going on all over the world and even out of this world to keep us all safe. What an awesome responsibility.
I've basically simplified this existence. One has to be resourceful, and that's the key to it all. Wood and water are the key necessities in this existence. I had 10, 12 people dwelling here for about a 2-year time period.
Shelters. And so homeless people, interestingly enough, have created their own housing. They've created a place for themselves along the street, and they found that ironically it creates a situation that's much closer to what one could have in an apartment, because they can have their own possessions, they can have their own furniture, a table, a chair, a desk, a bed. They can have pets, which they can't have in a shelter. And they can have a sense of community. They can have friends living around them.
Denial of any physical relationship between these. That's more of a physical demand than it is for women. It's
should be first. Our average was 0 to 10 below. You know, we're bundled for it. We're used to it. I've never had a cold. You know, but it's the idea, it wore on me after a while, you know, the constant getting up, you know, times I didn't want to go, I wasn't feeling good. Then after I had a heart attack, it was kind of hard for me to do, you know, even though we still did it.
Individuals have chosen to come to live here for whatever reason. You know, they may have drugs, alcohol, separated themselves from society. We've had, you know, Vietnam veterans that just, they prefer to, you know, they're not accepted by society and they prefer to isolate themselves. But I just don't see that as being good, because we're just a tool if we motivate them to return back to society and become a productive part. Left alone, they fall into a habitual pattern of maintaining a lower style of life, and I just don't see how it's any way, shape, or form good for themselves or society.
And now you see that this is perfectly possible. We've been building subway systems for years. We've been building underground basements and facilities and bunkers for generations. Men have only got better at it. Here is a video of an old truther talking about underground highways and highway networks. This is a very interesting video, and a lot of videos like this used to exist on YouTube before the many series of purges out there. Now you can't go and look at information like this easily. You must dig, you must look, you must go to the Wayback Machine and find.
Yeah. Goes all the way to Washington, D.C., huh? Goes all the way to Washington, D.C. Yeah, you Homeland Security? Yeah. How far have you taken this? Down to, how far have you actually ran a load? $100 miles? Up to Maine? No shit. How many miles do you think that is? Man, that's unbelievable. Not to mention, I heard there's one that goes all the way to Colorado, right? Unbelievable. What do you think you're hauling? Any idea? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Craft makes all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
You don't really know.
Yeah. I know there's been a lot of military stuff being hauled around lately, that's for sure, huh?
Yeah, we deliver to military.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. 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 Well, I appreciate, I heard there's water supply, food supply, everything's in there. Yeah, unbelievable.
But you don't get no cell phone service.
No. Peace, brother. I mean, basically, you got an underground roadway system here that runs all the way to Maine, to Washington, D.C., to Colorado. It's fully stocked. It runs completely underground. And you can see they've been hauling tons of military equipment. You know, know, they're stocking all these bases. Now, the other thing is the railroad system here is also very strategic. They're bringing in boxcar loads and they're dump shipping here, and they can really deliver to all these locations, which these locations go all the way to Area 51. These locations go all the way to Washington, D.C. There's access underneath the White House to this location, okay? So this is a strategic location, which is really the new command center for the Illuminati and the United States government. Well, forget the United States government. This is a headquarters for the Illuminati. This is where they'll ship most of their supplies. When they go underground, they can stay underground for quite some time. And this is stocked with food, water, everything they need. It's an underground city. So this is the north entrance, and we're going to go see if we can do some more digging.
You have to understand from a perspective of spirituality that these people are anti-God. They are anti-Christ. They are anti-wholesome and good. They are evil. And these evil people in their hubris really believe they could hide from the almighty creator of the universe underground. They think that they could build their hiding places underground. Here is an interesting video from Laurel Canyon, California, outside of Los Angeles, where there is a hidden military base that was used for government films, government recordings, and propaganda. And this is directly in the Laurel Canyon mountain area. We know all the weird MK Ultra projects back there, the weird Hollywood cults back there. Take a look at this.
What's interesting about this is it's somewhat hidden in plain sight. They didn't want to bring too much attention to it. You don't really know what's here. You can't tell how big it is. A portion of it is underground. This is an extraordinary facility that was built in the 1940s, originally as the West Coast Radio headquarters, and later added on to and taken over by the military department to do atom bomb research. And it served a very specific top secret purpose at that time. So it was tucked away in what they considered to be a protected area, because initially they had to keep in mind that this could be attacked. The military sold it in the 70s. Today it's used as a single-family residence. One of the things the current owners did was to spend a lot of time and energy and money on creating areas that would make it more livable. They wanted space to waste. It's a true labyrinth of a series of connected lofts, if you will. We're located in Laurel Canyon. It's a very eclectic part of Los Angeles. We're on 1.25 acres. The square footage is 53,000. There are 13 bathrooms, 6 to 8 bedrooms, depending on what spaces you want to use as a bedroom. There are about 6 galleries that can be used to display things. There's a very large swimming pool, which they've redone with a spa and a bridge. The soundstage was built to do a lot of their special top secret film projects, which included atom bomb research. They have 3 screening rooms here where they would view these top secret films and invite top secret military brass. They would come in from different parts of the country. There are 20 temperature controlled film vaults which housed very sensitive material from that era. The walls are very thick poured concrete. We are asking $6.3 million. This couldn't be duplicated today. The cost to rebuild this would way exceed what we're asking, and you wouldn't get permission to build it today. The square footage exceeds what they allow in this neighborhood, and just the cost of construction, the amount of land it takes up. It's kind of the ultimate clubhouse, if you will. It's a one of a kind.
Very interesting coincidence. I never knew about this military base in Laurel Canyon. I never knew that the government spent taxpayer money to create facilities where they would record propaganda when I was younger, but now I do. In the videos we've seen so far, if we connect the dots, it doesn't take much imagination to understand that there is a vast underground network of transportation tunnels around America. There are memes and leaked documents showing underground high-speed railway networks that connect Los Angeles to New York to Denver to all the major cities, and you can get to any of them within an hour or two. Fantastical ideas that we should be looking into because the technology is there. The possibility is there. Just because you're too busy watching sports ball doesn't mean that your government has not designed multi-tiered, multi-layer networks underneath New York City. It's all known and declassified. Mole men live down there. Vast underground networks of homeless people live in these tunnels and networks. No one listens to them because they're just crazy. They're just homeless. But they could tell you what they've seen down there, and many of them have told their stories. One of the most fantastic and interesting concepts of this underground idea is Denver Airport, Denver International Airport in Denver, Colorado. Various coincidences and conspiracy theories around this area of the country. Everything from Lee Line intersections and mass energy vortexes to continuity of government underground cities stretching from Cheyenne Mountain up to Denver. The Denver airport itself is an amazing topic that you could still find videos today to look into, and I suggest you do. Here are a couple interesting things that I find from the Denver airport. Obviously, the fact that they built it, they already had an existing airport. It was a much bigger airport, more concourses. It worked just fine. It was in Stapleton, Colorado. I'm not quite sure where that is in relation to the current airport, but it was in Denver. They did not need a new airport. The airport for DIA, they overspent, over-budgeted by billions of dollars. They put the airport on more acreage than any other airport in the country. They said it's for expansion reasons if they ever build more runways. But if you look at DIA, it is massive land they built. They hired multiple construction companies to come in and not communicate with each other to build different parts of it. That's compartmentalization. And it's known that Denver has vast underground highways and tunnel networks that people can get lost in for hours. I will show you a video on that.
I don't know.
Every day, on their way to catch a plane at DIA, thousands of people walk over it. And they don't even know what's going on right underneath them.
I wish I did. I have no idea.
Deep down in the trenches, out of sight and mind, there is an underground city. And just like all cities, there's a freeway system. In this case, full of tugs, carts, and sometimes chaos. This is where the airlines move our luggage from plane to baggage claim. And there's no time to waste.
When they're offloaded, they go into the when they're offloaded, they go into the dump belt. Everybody's yelling and screaming, where are my bags, where are my bags? And a lot of times, there's traffic. People get stuck behind other airlines.
This is one of two 7,000-foot tunnels under DIA. It is huge down here, more than 1 million square feet of space. And just over that wall, well, that's the train that you take. It reminds you of an actual freeway system. There are all kinds of signs posted and speed limits to follow.
DPD actually patrols down here, and they actually give out speeding tickets.
And just like driving the freeway, if you get lost, well, sometimes you get really lost.
You come down here, and if you don't know where you're going, you can literally be driving around in circles for hours. Went down, took a left instead of a right, then made another left, another right, and I'm over on the Seacon.
The reason there are so many tugs and carts is because of this. You may remember the airport tunnels as the home of the touted super-duper state-of-the-art automated baggage system. It was used when the airport opened, but never really worked very well. And even though United used a form of it until 2008, it is abandoned now. A looming framework of neglected metal, tracks, belts, and hopes.
I think it was state-of-the-art for its time. It simply cost too much to maintain, and it wasn't feasible to keep long-term.
And then there's this, a piece of graffiti by an airport worker. Or is it a sign of strange things that exist deep under the airport? Is there a secret city down here?
Well, there's certainly a city of people working, but it's not a secret.
What about a military complex?
No military complex.
Never seen that. Have you ever seen them do psychological warfare testing?
Never seen any testing like that.
You know, a lot of people think there's an alien base.
You know, people think that. I've never seen any little green men walking around.
Under DIA, thousands of workers spend their day doing their best to get you and the planes in and out on time.
It's a pretty amazing place.
And if it all works out right, just up the ramp, your suitcase gets loaded onto your plane. So when you get to where you're going, you don't go insane. Okay, we got to get this suitcase to the plane. Turn left. No, the other left. Not this way. I mean right. I mean left. Uh-oh. Gary Shapiro, 9 News.
Pretty interesting video, huh? And the people just know about it. It's a big joke to all the people. The aliens, even alien graffiti down there by one of the workers. Ooh. Denver Airport also has these weird tents on top of it. The tents are coated in Teflon fiberglass. They reflect 98% of the sun's rays. They reflect all sorts of infrared satellite footage. You cannot look into Denver Airport from the sky or underground. Those tents protect it. The weird murals in the airport. You can go on and on about Denver Airport. But what I want you to take from DIA is that in modern times, since the modifications of satellite technology and the improvement of such technology, military and government cannot just build anymore out in the open. They must hide their projects with public projects. If you take every Olympic stadium built after the 70s, they have gotten more and more advanced with this technology. The most recent Olympic stadiums that have been built have vast underground complexes. They have their own courthouses, their own police stations. They have their own hospitals and law offices. These public complexes are where they are building the underground networks and the new underground structures. Look for big projects. Look for, like I said, Olympic stadiums. But also look at like Elon Musk digging under Los Angeles, making tunnel networks under Los Angeles, connecting existing networks to old networks and new networks. These projects that are pushed by Wired Magazine, pushed by Vice Media Group, and they brag about it. Oh, Elon Musk is saving Los Angeles. He's building an underground train network to the airport. No, he's not. He's expanding current facilities and building new ones. And then you look at China Lake. You look at places where there's been massive earthquakes that mimic explosions, mimic almost nuclear blasts. Are these faction wars going on? Is this, for example, the military destroying CIA underground bases or foreign underground bases like you see in predictive programming media like Stranger Things, where they have an entire Russian battalion build an underground complex underneath the local mall? Bingo, that's exactly what we're talking about. Now, for you to find these in your local area, there are videos of how to find hidden military bases. This one guy's video is pretty interesting. He finds big infrastructure in little areas. He showed that there's a massive telecommunications hub, a mega government building in this small area of England where there's like a small village, very little town, quaint. Why would there be a need for that much telephone power in that area if there was an underground facility there?
The oddity that you come to is this little building here. Now, this is in fact a telephone exchange, and it's enormous and it's active. You can stand outside it, you can hear it humming. Now if I zoom out, you tell me why this place needs a huge telephone exchange. Nearest tiny town is over here called Totland. About 3,000, 4,000 people live there. And as you can see, there is no real reason for a huge telephone exchange that's very active to be there at all. And we'll go up the access road it's a lovely, nice paved access road. It is really a very, very strong, well-maintained road. Why?
And look around where you live. Look for weird power lines that go underground all of a sudden. Or, for example, for my New York homies, there is a vast underground network that is known that connects New York City to upstate New York, the aqueduct system. Roman aqueducts and Greek aqueducts were used in ancient times as means of escape, means of entering a city. So man has used these waterways that people think are just for water for other things too. Every major city around America has vast underground catacomb-style networks of subway tunnels, infrastructure tunnels, and city/bomb shelters. If your school you went to had a bomb shelter, if you can get into that bomb shelter legally, like, maybe pretend you're going to film a movie there, get a permit to go look at it with permission from the people. Go down there and look around if possible. It's usually not. These fallout shelters, most of them connect to these underground networks. In my time working in Los Angeles, I was able to film in some of these locations and learn about the vast underground networks of tunnels underneath downtown Los Angeles, where buildings connect to buildings, banks connect to banks. You remember that Wells Fargo Spec Ops raid, the training exercise, where they entered one building? These buildings in downtown LA are all connected. You can go to one building and end up in another. So I want you to take from this information that there are billions and trillions of missing dollars and nothing to show for it. Your roads are failing. Your airports are failing unless it's a New World Order airport like DIA. Your telephone lines are failing. Your local communities are crumbling while the CIA steals trillions of dollars and builds underground bases, underground resorts. Stuff like the Laurel Canyon base, where it's like a mansion. There's like 18 bathrooms and marble floors and sex dungeons. And I mean, you could look at it. You could look at these bathrooms and say, oh, this is a military base? Or is this a Hollywood sex dungeon? It doubles as both. And you can't talk about DUMBS without reporting on Phil Schneider, the whistleblower that leaked all this information very nonchalantly. A lot of people didn't believe him. And what's fascinating is the scenario around his death. He supposedly committed suicide by strangling himself with a catheter, a rubber hose he strangled himself with, not hung himself, but very odd. This is the man that all the roads lead to with the leaks, and I had to comment on him towards the end of this video. Very fascinating information he had. And the fact of the matter is our government is lying to you. They're lying to you about your health, your food, your water, your military, your taxes, the missing trillions of dollars. And what is happening with all this money? You think they're just adding it to a pile and burning it? Well, they might as well. They are burning it on projects like underground superhighways, like underground infrastructure for continuity of government for the elite. They are planning the Georgia Guidestones scenario, where 95% of the world population, that includes you and me, is gone, and the 5% of the rich can rule the earthly paradise. That's what they think. That's what they've been lied to. What the real scenario is, they're building their own tombs. They're building their own crypts for when the return of the king happens, which is all foretold. The Bible, written 2,000 years ago, speaks about mankind hiding in caves, under mountains, and under the earth, and praying for the rocks to crush them. A book 2,000 years ago wrote that statement, and it is true. Mankind is hiding under earth. They are designing super cities under earth that you won't be a part of. If Google gets their way, if YouTube gets their way, if the New World Order gets their way. People like you won't allow that to happen. Keep spreading the good message. Keep red-pilling people. Help spread videos like this. Get the word out there. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this little mini documentary about deep underground military bases. I also want to thank my Patreons of the show. This month, Half of your contributions went to our friend Laser Blastoid, who is on a spirit quest, riding the East Coast on a mountain bike, sleeping under the open sky, living like a real human being. And we commend him. God bless you, sir. Thank you all for watching.